Welcome to the CFAMC listening room with Jay Foulkrod. Say your name again.
Foulkrod.
Did I say
J.
it?
Foulkrod.
Foulkrod. Okay.
Close enough. Close enough. People have been asking me that my whole life. How do you say that?
And Jay, of course, will be sharing both his ministry that he does uh, for children that in foster homes and their parents actually, and also his music, particularly the Triumph of the Light Bearer. So, where shall we begin, Jay?
Uh, how about if I open with a little prayer and a Bible verse? Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
You're seeing
yes,
the. Okay,
yes.
good. Yes. Well, let me go ahead and let's read from the Word first. Um, just given somewhat what I wanted to share tonight, I thought I'd open with this Bible verse, Mark chapter 10, verses 29 through 31 from the NIV. Truly, I tell you, Jesus replied, no one who has left home or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for me in the gospel will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age, homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and fields, along with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. And I just wanted to share that because I am amazed when I hear the word of God and I hear Jesus um, make what strikes me as a promise for those who suffer and for those who have lost and for those who have struggled even with family, that God has a way of making us whole in this life and in the next,
Yes.
um, even where there's suffering and loss, and even when that suffering and loss involves family. So um, let me pray. Lord, thank you so much for the chance to be a part of CFAMC and to present tonight and to get to know these wonderful believers and their heart for you as expressed in their music. And I pray that the wonder and the awe that I feel for you would come through in that music and that it would magnify to your greater glory. Amen.
Amen.
So we're going to get to some music. But I wanted to spend some time talking and telling some stories tonight as well,
It'd be great.
and telling stories about the work of God and what I see Him doing and how He is faithful to His word and to His promises. That just in ways that for me just invoke awe. And that same awe and wonder at His glory that I see as He works in the world and He's true to His word uh, is what I try to convey in the music that I do. I'm an avocational composer. I have 3 pieces to my name. And, in the pieces that I've done, and probably any piece I would ever do in the future, I think that spirit will always be there. Um, that I make music to make a proclamation, a statement of wonder at God's goodness and glory in a way that can't be accomplished in just words. So you have to marshal more than words to do your best to convey it. And even then, you may not convey it fully, but I've done my best. So, and the first stories that I would like to tell are about an area of ministry in which my wife and I are involved called, uh, we have a nonprofit for it. It's called Family Restoration Coalition. And that nonprofit, FRC, puts on a program that we've titled Three Strands. Three Strands is mentoring services and parenting classes that we provide to parents who have what's in Texas called CPS, Child Protective Services. These are the biological parents whose kids are in foster care. They've done something worthy of having their kids removed, and yet they are working towards restoration of their children and their family. and working the services that the court has ordered in order to try to achieve that. So I'm not going to read this, but I'll simply say, make a statement that I hope resonates. Family is the source of everything right and wrong in the world. Um, now we could debate whether or not that's technically true. Are there other things that are great goodness and troubles in this world? Certainly. But I make that statement with that sort of absoluteness, I guess, just to convey how important family is. And we've been privileged to witness the work of God doing restoration in families in ways that are just awe-inspiring. And I'd like to share some of those stories with you. But before I do, I'd kind of like to frame this issue of foster care and broken families with a little bit of data that is informed by my wife's and my work and ministry with around 250 or so parents who are in this situation. Parents who have court cases, who have had their children removed and are working for restoration. In our experience, well, the data from the state of Texas, which is where we live, tells us that once a child is removed from their parents, put into foster care, on average, they've got about a 35% chance of going back to their parents. 65% of the time, once the child enters foster care, they're not going back to mom and dad. Our experience working with these parents suggests to us that that number is tragically low, that somewhere around 75 to 80% of parents who have their kids removed could be reentrusted with the care of their children, but they need some help getting there. But it's a reasonable level of help. 75 to 80% of those parents could do the work that they need to do. Only 35% will see their kids return home. And that's it's a massive economic cost to the taxpayer. It's a massive human cost to families, to children, that has vast generational ripples for the children, for their children's children, for society, for our criminal justice system, for all sorts of layers of impact. And so it's natural to ask the question, why is the gap so big? Why do only 35% of these children go home, when those of us who've worked kind of in the trenches would say it should be 75 to 80%? What's the difference? Explain that gap. And so I'm just going to kind of give you my assessment, my wife's and my assessment of kind of the reasons that children don't return home. And I'm going to start working from the left. If we look at least in Texas, 100% of what are called conservatorship cases, custody cases, where the state takes custody of the children, we would say probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of the time, that case is so severe, what happened to the children was so severe that you really need to terminate quickly and move those children on and give them the best chance at a life somewhere else that you can. Those are the really severe cases of abuse and neglect, where that really is the kind of the necessary course of action. It's a relatively small percentage of the cases that flow through CPS. The next kind of bucket of cases that we've seen that I would say is probably 10 to 20% of the cases is parents who probably could be entrusted to care for their kids. They've got the raw resources and capability to do it. But as you work with them, you discover that there's just a deep-seated unwillingness to make the changes that they need to make to do so. These are the parents who, when you get right down to it, they're willing to go to court and try to fight their case. But you get to know them and work with them, and they're fighting that case really more for their own image than anything. It's someone else's problem that my kids were removed. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need to change. I'm gonna fight the system. Um, they and you look at how they behave, and um, it's almost convenient to them that someone took their children, because then they don't have to do the work of parenting them. But rather they can show up occasionally for visits. They can bring candy and toys and have fun and kind of be the good guy with their kids, talk about how everyone else has wronged them, and not do anything else that the court has ordered them to do between those visits. So it's kind of nice letting someone else do the hard work of parenting. You can complain about how you've been treated. Everyone else is the bad guy, not you. You don't need to change. I would say that's probably 10 to 20% of cases. So that explains kind of what I would say is the 20 to 30%, call it 25% at the middle, of cases that are rightful terminations. So what explains the difference between the 35% that actually go home and the 75% that could? And I group those into two big buckets. One is the real problem of hostile or subversive actors working against the parents to undermine justice in their case. And sometimes those hostile actors don't even know they're being hostile, yet they're undermining the restoration of the family. So let me kind of describe that a little bit more. That can be, in some cases, we've seen scenarios where there are drug testing facilities that have a disturbing pattern of false positives in their drug tests. And those drug tests can actually be pivotal in determining whether or not to return the kids. It can be relatives or neighbors who are working to undermine the return. Unfortunately, honestly, the biggest problem that we see that we'd put in that bucket is typically the foster parents, and sometimes the foster parents working in conjunction with caseworkers or
Oh, yeah.
CASAs,
Sure.
as court-appointed special advocates for the children, who kind of form an unholy alliance, I'd describe it, and who determine, you know what, the foster family is really better parents. They're more stable. The kids would just be better with them. So we're going to make it very difficult for this parent who's trying to achieve restoration. And some of the things that we've observed include foster parents who will show up at the biological parent's visit and observe it, even though that's not their role or their responsibility, but they'll show up anyway. They'll take notes, entering into their notes various damning things that they observe the parents do that may or may not be true, relaying that to the caseworkers as evidence against the bio parent. Um, uh, we've seen foster parents try to form a connection with the biological parent, but in ways that discourage them and try to trigger them into a relapse. We've seen foster parents, through the use of pet names, try to erase the biological parent's given name that they gave to that child. So rather calling this child Joey, we'll call him Mr. Zumi, and we'll begin to teach him that that is his name rather than the name that the parents gave. Things that I hope, as I begin to describe these, get under your skin, and they should, because it's wrong, and it's a travesty. So that's a real problem in these cases, is people determining that, of their own judgment or sometimes their own selfish motivation. Maybe you're, as a foster parent, you couldn't have your own kids, so you're out to try to take someone else's. But it happens.
What about
Yeah.
adoption? Is
Yeah.
that adoption? Adoption?
Well, that's a pathway to adoption, right? Maybe we can go pluck a child out of the foster system and adopt them that way. So that's kind of seen as one pathway to it. So certainly that's not all foster parents, but we would estimate 20 to 25% of cases have some sort of dynamic like that going on, and left unchecked, they will succeed in scuttling the return of the children. And it's a real area of justice, and an area where the church can be involved. The other kind of big bucket of reasons that we see children fail to be returned is what I would call on this right, kind of this yellow bucket, and this is probably the remaining chunk of it. Undeveloped executive function on the part of the parent. And there can be many kind of other reasons that are associated with that. There's often substance abuse, there's prison records, there's trauma history, mental health, all these things that are kind of going on with the parent. But the way it kind of all bubbles up, or the way I'd summarize it, is they haven't quite reached that level of adult maturity in their ability to manage themselves and navigate the adult world, that they're quite ready to not only manage themselves, but manage their children. And if you work with them and you talk with them, often you kind of realize it's kind of like I'm talking to a teenager here, right? They look like an adult, but they still kind of make rash decisions. They get freaked out easily. They haven't developed that skill of how do you navigate a complex world, which often requires strong advocacy for yourself, being able to work well with others, and deal with hurdles and roadblocks that get thrown in your way, and how do you work cooperatively around that? I mean, the adult world is challenging, and they haven't quite gotten there in terms of their overall maturity. These two, so the problem of the hostile actor and undeveloped executive function are kind of the big reasons that explain that gap of 35% to 75 or 80%. And I would say in both of those areas, the church has a massive role to play in terms of helping these families, because healthy adult relationships, mentor relationships, particularly communal relationships like you can create in a church, do wonders towards addressing all these issues. It's a lot harder for hostile actors to come in and scuttle a case if there are more eyes on it, and there's a community of people surrounding this parent, seeing what's going on, and able to help push back against the injustice. These cases can get complex. I mean, a family law case involving foster care, there's many players in the case, many advocates who are called before the court to provide testimony. There's only so much that any judge can see at any one time. They aren't necessarily aware of all the underlying dynamics going on. And it's relatively easy for bad actors to get in and manipulate the case and steer the outcome to a conclusion it doesn't need to go to. But the involvement of the church with these families can be huge, both to help secure justice and to provide the relationship context in which these parents can rapidly mature into kind of more full adulthood. They learn how to be an adult by relating with healthy relationships to other adults who love them, who are cheering for them, and who can kind of guide them into how to walk, put on the full mantle of adulthood, is what I'd say. So this picture, we're going to have a lot of conversation tonight. We will get to music, we'll tell some stories, but I'm going to flash some art at different points too. I pulled this picture off the web. It's an Adobe stock photo. I think it's called the Shaman Warrior. And it's just a picture of, you see this kind of fiery picture of some sort of spiritual warrior in the background. They're swinging a sword, and they just run that sword right through this devilish creature that you can kind of see here. And you see parts of the arms and body parts of this devilish creature kind of flying every which way. And this image, two women come to mind when I saw this picture, and I was like, I need to use this as an illustration. The first woman is the bride of Christ, the church. Just a dramatic picture in the way I interpret it, or the meaning I impose on it, not necessarily what the artist put there, is the bride of Christ carrying the gospel of Christ, the light of the gospel, into a dark world and felling the darkness. And the other is my wife, who is just quite a voice and advocate for justice, particularly with these families, and quite effective at it. So anyway, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So the program that my wife and I lead is called Three Strands. We work through churches who we train to put on this program It involves a 9-week parenting class. We get referrals from local caseworkers and judges of parents who would be interested, and they can get credit towards their battery of court-ordered services that they need to complete, which includes a parenting class. They can get credit for taking this. And in that class, it's not just a parenting class. It is faith-based, it's scriptural, it's gospelly centered, but they're also assigned mentors of other adults who are in that church who will get to know that parent, walk alongside them, work through some of the lessons in the class with them. On class nights, we provide the meals to the church. There's free childcare. We provide transportation assistance to help them get to the class if they need that. They build community and relationships in the context of that church. It's no cost to them or to the state because the church is providing this. And we work with those churches to do it. And I'd like to share maybe a video of testimony of one of the parents that have come through. And I hope that this will be moving to you and evoke in you some of the same wonder for the glory of God and his ability to bring light to darkness and bring healing and recovery to some of the darkest wounds. So I'm going to go ahead and play that video.
Hi, I'm Danielle
Can you hear
Maynard,
that?
and this is my daughter, Sky
Yeah,
Brielle.
Chris?
Say hi, Sky. Look at the camera. Say hi. I found this church-sponsored parenting class a couple years back when I got involved with CPS after losing my 3-year-old son. I lost custody of him when he was about 1 year old, and because of the shame and agony of that, I got involved with drugs and alcohol. During that time, I became pregnant with my daughter.
I met Danielle. She was in this parenting class. At the time, she only had her son Gentry that was in foster care with a family member. So when we began our journey, she just had her son. And then in June of 2018, she had Sky.
After I lost Sky in the hospital and began looking for rehabs and trying to be state funded to attend rehab, I did find a rehab that would take her, one of the only 3 in Texas that actually allow you to bring your baby into rehab, and it was in Houston, Texas. So when I was attending rehab in Houston, during that 3 months, Lori, my mentor, was very active and a big part in my life. I spoke to her almost every day on the phone. She sent me supplies, things that I needed for Sky, and she came and visited me every other weekend. I don't know if I would have been able to get through that without her there by my side through every single part of that.
In January, it was time for her to be released, and there was no housing, there was no place to go, there was no resources in place yet. So on January, I think 3rd or 4th, Sky and Danielle came home with me, and they have been living with me and my husband Duffy since then.
There was no even discussion as she could come stay at our house.
After I got out of rehab and was in the ends of my case dealing with CPS, I lost Sky. They came and took her from me due to a positive hair follicle, and we weren't sure why it was positive, because I had not used since before I went into rehab.
We could not believe it. It was just something that couldn't have happened.
This drug test that came out positive was a very serious matter, because it meant that Sky could be taken away from Danielle, and she could lose Sky and not have custody ever again. With the support of the church family, Danielle was able to get more testing done, and they all came out negative.
The day that we went to court to fight this, Becky and Lori were in the courtroom praying.
There was an emergency court hearing that Danielle was able to get, and I just had to be there.
We had people from my small group in prayer during the court time. We had people that were from our church and small group that came to court and were praying as the court session went on.
As the questions were going on, I was just praying the Holy Spirit be present.
I really felt the presence of the Lord in the courtroom that day.
The judge was very gracious and very kind.
The judge heard our defense and immediately said, bring that baby back to her mother today.
Having those people there in the courtroom with me, having the presence of God in the courtroom with me, it really made a big impact on how that day went. And of course, her case was closed and she's mine now, and no CPS involved, and it just feels good. Now I have a job that I'm working and applying for housing, my own housing, and we're very close to getting my 3-year-old's case closed.
Ever since she got to where she is today, she hasn't looked back.
Since Danielle had come to live with us, she's attended church with us regularly.
I started going to a small group every week and praying and reading along and doing our Bible study. All these people are like family to me now. They're like aunts and uncles, and Sky's got several aunts and several uncles. I've had faith and known that I could get through it all because of these people standing by my side. They're pretty much my best friends, and they will be forever. Hi.
All right. Well, maybe I'll give you a chance if anyone has any questions or any reaction they want to offer.
How did you get started doing this?
Great question. So my wife and I, we have 4 children, 4 daughters. We're just recent empty nesters. So our daughters are now aged 25 to 19. When we moved to Austin, Texas in 2009 from Houston, we started attending a church in a small group that had a number of adoptive families in it. And my wife was kind of bitten by the itch, or bitten by the bug, to maybe we should adopt. And I wasn't there initially. But she asked me to pray about it and consider it, which I did. And over the course of time, I started to warm to the idea. I mean, we had 4 kids of our own. We were very busy. But it just started to strike me, we've got room in our home physically. We've got room in our home family relationally. We've got enough love and ability to care for other children that maybe we could adopt. And the more we talked about it, at first we started talking about international adoption, and then we said, no, let's look at domestic adoption. Maybe we try to adopt someone out of the CPS system. And the more we kind of talked about that and prayed about it and researched it, we started to say, well, maybe we should foster to adopt. And then it was just maybe we should just be willing to be a foster family, a middle family for a child and a family to support them, to keep that love that child and keep them safe until such time that mom and dad can work whatever they need to work out to be reentrusted with their children. So we kind of went through that process and went through the training and became foster parents. So we had our first foster placement in 2013, 2014. It was a little baby girl. So another girl. So I got 4 daughters. At the time, my youngest, Allie, was probably 7 or 8. And she was incredibly excited to get, a little foster baby sister, because she was the youngest. She was the baby. Now she had a baby sister. So this baby came home and lived with us for 7 or 8 months. And in the process of falling in love with and caring for that child, we also got to know and fall in love with her mom. And just, supported her in different ways through our just befriending her and letting her into our home and enjoying meals with us from time to time. And just built a real sweet, trusting relationship with that mom. And then after 8 months, it was a bittersweet day to see the baby go home to her mama. It was sad to say goodbye, but we knew it was, all of us, that it was the right thing and the best thing. And since then, we lost touch with I'll call her Baby Z and her mama for a number of years, but just recently, 10 years later, I reestablished contact with the mom. And I was able to surprise Tanya on a trip up to Dallas, where we were going to visit friends, to meet our now 10-year-old former foster child, who's at home with mom, still doing great. The family is just, so the mom now has 4 children, and is married to the man who was the baby's dad at the time. So he had been in prison, and mom, was coming off of a meth addiction, crystal meth. And that's why Zoe was with us. I shared her name, didn't intend to do that. But they're doing great as a family. And it's just, so it's sweet now to see 10 years later be reconnected. And Tanya and the mom will be speaking at a conference together in a month. We both had an incredible impact on each other. The baby was, with us at the time that she needed to be with us, but allowed mom to focus on the things she needed to and get well and get whole. And she's just doing great now. And the baby, the 10-year-old, is just, mom's running her to all sorts of activities. She's interested in science and STEM and music, and wants to be an engineer or an architect one day. And at the rate she's working, she's going to do it. So just a real beautiful story. It's sweet at this point in our life to see the fruit of long obedience to something start to come to fruition. We had a second foster placement a few years later, and that was a much more tragic story. That baby went home, and his parents are now in jail for his murder. So, but we love those parents too. We try to get to see them in prison. These cases are complex. I don't think anyone foresaw something like that happening. But all this fuels this mission, this ministry, and it all fuels a wonder for the glory of God and his ability to work miracles through the work of the church. So that's a several minute answer.
Any other comments or questions on Jay's ministry?
I think this is a wonderful ministry. and working through the churches where you already have the fellowship and the wherewithal that people loving and caring about one another. And this is what so many people in our world have no concept of, that you know, it's just so important for people to know they can be loved and cared about.
Yeah.
Could you repeat your quote you said at the beginning about the family?
Yeah. Family is the source of everything right and wrong in the world.
Family is very important, I know, to God.
Yeah.
It's a very important thing.
Yeah. So, if there are no other comments or questions, I will march on and we can start to listen to some music. And I'll tell some stories around this music too. But this
One
idea,
question though.
yeah.
Are you going to have more videos where we actually have to listen to speech and guitar at the same time? I am
No,
unable to listen
no.
to both. If
Okay.
if there is speech and music, I do not hear what is said, so I had to actually stop. Closed captioning would help.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because I have a piece that has narration in it, and I can play it without the narration if that would be helpful.
Well, I won't hear the narration anyway. I'll
Okay.
just hear the music.
Okay, gotcha. All right, when we get there, we can decide together whether we want to play it with or without narration, and I'm happy to do it either way. So I think the first piece that I'd like to play, as I said, I'm an avocational composer, and my first foray into composing was about 1.5 years ago for my daughter's wedding. My oldest daughter got married, and there's a story here. I hadn't, gosh, for most of my adult life since I went to college, I hadn't really done much musical. I mean, I'd sang in church choirs and we'd sing on Sundays, but I didn't really regularly listen to music as a part of my routine. I didn't play an instrument like I had in high school. I kind of have been for most of my adult life deep in the grind of being a husband and father and provider for my family, which in many ways probably ground out participation in music in a lot of ways. And when my daughter got engaged to Josh, my daughter Grace got engaged to a young man named Josh. He wanted to be an audio engineer and loves playing the guitar and has a lot of musical gifts and interests. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to form a playlist on Spotify to share with my soon-to-be son-in-law, so we have something to talk about and bond over. And that kind of reawakened something in me musically. So I shared that with him, and as we started to prepare for my daughter's wedding, we worked out the budget, and I gave the numbers to my daughter and said, you have this much to work with, except for one category. I handed her the budget and I said, all right, this is what you got to work with: cake, dress, whatever, all these things. But when it comes to the music, I said a not so Christian version of, well, forget the budget. Dad's the budget on the music line item. We're going to go big. I want to have excellent music there. We'll hire lots of musicians and blah, blah, blah. And I started help do a lot of the work of picking out the music, and I was trying to figure out what should be her bridal march. And I was listening to all this music, and I was like, you know what? I think she should march to Camille Saint-Saëns' Organ Symphony. The first 26 measures, this massive organ blast, and all the brass, and then the four-handed piano just playing what sounds like a bride floating on air down the aisle. And I was all excited about that. And I presented that to my daughter, and she shot it down. And we had also hired a guy to be our music director, and he shot it down. He said, there's no way you're doing this. And they all said, it sounds like you're sending your daughter off to war rather than helping her get married. So I said, okay, I relented. And the music director that we had hired, he's a kind of a local big guy in the local Austin music scene. He said, I could actually custom write you your own bridal march. And I was attracted to the idea. I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. Maybe we could maybe we could do that. And the more I thought about it, I thought, or maybe I could write a bridal march for my daughter.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. And so I got some composing software and started to doodle stuff out, and I got my ideas down and sent them off to Dave, was his name, the music director. And the first pass of what I sent to Dave, he listened to it and then he shot it down. He said, "Listen, there's too much wrong with what you've just written. I can't in professional good conscience actually do this as the bridal march." And I was like, okay, well, what's wrong with it? And he told me, and then I came back a week or two later with everything fixed, and I said, "Can you produce this? Could we do this?" And he relented. He said, "All right, we'll do this. Well, I'll hire the musicians to perform this at the wedding." And we also agreed that we would get it recorded. So we got the same musicians who would perform it at the wedding to do a studio recording of it. And so the name of that piece is Headlong Forward Together. And that's what I'd like to play for you now. I've got a big write-up on it. I won't necessarily read that unless you really are interested. But yeah, I got a good probably page that would take 10 minutes to read. But I'll just kind of summarize the vision of that piece. As with every piece I've done, the few that I've done, I'm trying to tell a story. I'm trying to tell a big story about something important to me that is proclaiming the glory of God in the gospel. And I was trying to tell the story in their bridal march, their wedding, of what they meant to me, but also what marriage means to me, and the picture that it paints looking forward into the future in eternal glory of the marriage of Christ to his church. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and play that for you. This picture, by the way, is my daughter Grace and her now husband Josh Tips. So here we go. Headlong forward together. Hear that?
Sounds a lot better than my first piece, boy. Way better.
Well, it had some assistance. The man who produced it did some editing and improvements. If somewhere I have the sheet music for it, and I'd be happy to send that out if I can find it.
Yeah, that's gorgeous, gorgeous, and exciting, and challenging. And I think she must have been very happy with it.
Yeah, it was quite something. All right. I will move on unless there are any other comments or questions.
Now I have a whole bunch of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, as a composer, I work with a melody, I work with lines that I put together. So since this was your first one, how did you work at it?
Good question. I'd say with all the pieces that I've done, I've started with some sort of image in my mind, a picture in my mind, and I'm trying to tell orally. I'm trying to convey in sound what I'm visioning visually in my head and how that makes me feel. So that's a very high level answer, but I'm trying to fit sound to a grand visual image. Um, And then, I just started doodling out melody lines, just kind of multiple melody lines. And, kind of one of the core themes in that song, believe it or not, is just the Westminster chimes that you hear over and
Yep,
over throughout there.
yeah,
Da, 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 da,
yep.
da, da. It's just, you take the last note of the chimes and drop it down an octave. Dum, bum, 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 bum. And, I just started rolling with that. And it's like, oh, I don't know. I just, started hearing melodies in my head. What melody conveys the picture of glory or beauty that I'm trying to convey? And, I definitely in that piece, I was like, I want strings to convey a feminine voice. I want the brass to be kind of a strong, muscular, masculine voice. And the picture I'm trying to paint is of a woman and a man in anticipation moving towards each other. Um, they're each calling out for each other. Where are you? I'm here. I'm coming. I'm on my way. And some of the other, instruments are the voices of friends and family observing, cheering the whole process on. And at the same time, it wasn't just that. It's this bigger vision of Christ and his church in eternal glory, that great merger. So yeah, I, I can, yeah, my answer is kind of more, it's vision that I'm trying to put to sounds, um, and what voices, convey which threads of that visual image.
You must have a video
Do-
of the wedding procession with that.
Yeah, I think we do, or my daughter does. I'm not even sure I've seen it.
I hope you
So
didn't record a football game over that or something.
no, no, yeah,
Yes, so you've got your line, ba 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 bum,
hmm
and then you've got other lines that you put with it. Do you
yeah.
decide instrumentation at the same time, and then you work out the counterpoint afterwards and the harmonies, or do you work with
Yeah, I just
recordings that you
I'd kind
put
of
together?
I'd kind of doodle out a melodic line and say, this feels like a masculine horn sort of thing. And then what's kind of the feminine response to that that's a little different. And yeah, I wish I could explain.
No, thank you.
Um,
You do
yeah,
explain.
yeah.
Yes.
It's just intuitive instinct. It's my instinct and intuition at work. So um
It's interesting. I'm going to comment on Lydia's speech patterns, which when you talk very clearly. You don't mumble. So your students would have to catch everything you say, I think.
I'm a teacher. What can I say?
Well, some teachers don't. Some teachers will, oh, we get the book up 70 minutes, you know,
Yeah.
that's very good. Anyway, that's not about music, but just I noticed that. That's a perfect length piece too. It's not
mhm.
too long.
Well, I actually, when I approached the piece almost like I literally, we went to the wedding venue and I counted the steps from where she would enter
Oh no.
Mhm.
and I said, all right, if we're walking at this pace, it needs to be about 2 minutes long.
Mhm.
And there was even like a curve in the aisle, like it was an outdoor wedding in Austin in March. We can have outdoor weddings here then. And she would kind of enter from the side on the back, and she'd come down from the side, and then there was a big curve kind of in the middle, and she'd walk between the audience at that point. And I was like, okay, there even needs to be timing in the piece for her,
But you were walking her down the aisle.
yeah.
You weren't turning around and trying to conduct, right? Or
No,
something.
no. I had someone doing that. I just wrote it but I wrote it with a view even to the physical location of the wedding, of the timing of when she'd be the veil would be open, and she'd walk through and then kind of be coming down the side, and then, she'd make this turn and start walking down towards the front of the venue at different points when the music would be kind of transitioning. So, all right. Unless there's any other questions or comments, I'll jump to the next piece.
One final comment.
Yeah.
As I'm listening there, I hear Elgar, I hear Beethoven, and
Mhm.
I hear all kinds of composers, which tells me you've done a lot of listening and your influences come from a little bit everywhere. So it's
That's
nice
true.
putting all of that together. Thank you.
Well, wait till you hear the next piece. There's some other influences there that'd be pretty interesting to talk about. All right. Okay, let me move on. The next piece that I'd like to share is one that I'm probably going to retitle, um, but it is currently entitled "The Triumph of the Light Bearer." And I'm going to rename it because the light bearer that I refer to is Jesus Christ. But as a couple people reminded me, the name Lucifer in the Bible literally means
Oh,
light bearer.
oh,
So yeah, so I don't want to convey the wrong idea.
oh, you got to change the title. Wow.
Yeah. So I will be changing the title, but for now
That's
it's the
part of
title.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
in the words, do you have the word light bearer there in the
no,
words?
doesn't show up anywhere in the lyrics. The Triumph of the Light Bearer. I think this is a very big and complex piece, and I would describe it as an epic and apocalyptic narrative, in which I basically tell the gospel story from creation through to redemption to consummation and judgment, and a bunch of rich biblical images that are drawn from all over the scriptures. It is a massive piece for brass, a really big choir, and narrator, and percussion. And I think to really appreciate the piece, I probably need to start by walking you through the narration and the lyrics, because there's a very rich storyline there that I think will enhance your appreciation of the music. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bring up the lyrics, and I'm going to kind of talk my way through the storyline as I read the lyrics, and kind of tell you what to expect at different points of the piece of music. And I'm blowing up the lyrics here. Can you all see that?
Yeah, well,
Okay. As I talk my way through this, anything that is kind of a left justified is the narrator speaking. Stuff that is indented and more right justified are song lyrics that the choir would sing. And anything that's in red is Christ or God speaking. So there are a few points at which I give words to God or to Christ himself in here, but for the most part, it's the other characters in this piece. It's about a 12-minute piece. It consists of two sections that are really meant to be played immediately, one leading right into the other. Possibly someone could break this into two different pieces and play just the first part or just the second one. Part one is about the first 8 minutes of the piece, and I've entitled it Resurrection Encounter. Part two kicks in is the last 4 minutes of the piece, and it's called The March of the Cruciformed. The Resurrection Encounter tells the story of a nameless onlooker stumbling upon the open tomb on Easter morning. And from there, it's a series of rapidly shifting scenes with rapid changes in the music and the melody that convey a lot of images around that. So let me just start. I'll start to read lyrics and narration, and I'll kind of intersperse some commentary as I go to kind of make the storyline clear. I would say what my intent in this piece was to use a lot of biblical imagery and certainly gospel thematic ideas, but not in a way that I'm conveying the exact precise events of as they're told in the scripture, but yet still tell the same story. Like, be true to the message of the gospel, be true to it in image and theme, even if what I'm telling storyline is extra biblical, if that makes sense. So let me just talk my way through it. Actually, I'll go ahead and do this. The style of this piece is inspired by another work of visual art. And let me take a step back and let me show you that piece of artwork for a minute. And there's a story behind this artwork. This is a painting that we now own called Light Bearer. We discovered it in Taos, New Mexico when we were there for Thanksgiving in 2017. It was painted by a man named Randall LeGros. And I've never been a big visual artist. I've never owned any artwork. This is really the only piece of artwork that we own. We were kind of we were walking back through the town of Taos, New Mexico, from where we had enjoyed our Thanksgiving meal to the condo we were staying at. And while we had some time to blow, we were walking through some art galleries there in downtown Taos. And we were just going through, and we walked in and we stumbled across this painting. And I've never had a reaction like this to a piece of artwork, but I was completely mesmerized as soon as I saw it. Not only me, but my children and my wife were too. We all just started staring at it, and we were amazed at what we were looking at. And I knew the more I studied, I was like, only a Christian believer could have painted this, because there's so much imagery in here as you stare at it that starts to pop out, that tells a story. It tells the gospel story, really, that it just starts to overwhelm you. Like, there's this in there, there's that, there's this.
Could you do
Yeah.
out with an arrow or something some of
Sure.
those things, or maybe even enlarge to show?
Well, I don't know if I can
At
make
first,
it.
if I may say something, you don't. If you look at that for the first 20 seconds, you think, oh, it's an abstract painting.
It is abstract.
And you start looking closely, it's not abstract. It is, but it's also representational in an interesting way of combining those two things. It's an interesting idea.
So I'll tell you what I first saw, and since then, since I own it and I've had many chances to look at it, there's so much more I see. But my eyes were first drawn to this figure here. You can kind of see it looks like you're on the water, and there's a boat in the water, and there's a figure in the boat.
Oh yeah.
And there's a little candle at the front of the boat, and you can barely make out a cross right here in the background. Can you see that?
Wow, yeah.
And it's all kind of hazy. It's like you're looking at a boat on a lake and there's fog or something all around. So it's misty. But you see Christ in the boat on this lake. And if you even look, you kind of maybe even can see some other shadowy figures in there with him. But certainly there's this central figure right here in this boat, and everything's lit up around him. The other thing that I noticed right away is this, what appears to be a sanctuary up at the top. Like you're looking at stained glass across the top of this. And kind of what that spoke to me when I first saw it is, I'm like, this is a picture of my faith. Because what I'm looking at is, it's kind of shadowy. Life is sometimes not clear about who you are and what you need to be doing. And are you right? Are you wrong? Which way do you go? But yet Christ is in the center of all that. And even though sometimes it's hazy, that fire is still burning, right? He's there. And all of creation is his sanctuary. Everything is God's. It's all his holy place. So he's the king of it all, even when it feels hazy and dark and you're not sure. So that was kind of my first impression of this. I was like, wow, what a picture of faith. I'll pause right there. I'd like for you, as you just look at this, to, if you have any other impressions that you want to share, what you see, go ahead and share those.
What's in the lower right corner?
I believe that this right here, it's several. I interpret it as several things. One, it looks like a reflection of some of the sanctuary stained glass from up above, but it also looks like a hand to me, kind of held it to the side. And there's some interesting texture on the painting. There's some interesting texture on the painting. You kind of feel like there's almost like a circular wound right there, right around the wrist of the hand. So, it looks like the nail scarred hand of Christ, in addition to being, a reflection on the water of the sanctuary up above.
What is the dimension of the painting?
It's 40 inches wide by 50 inches tall.
It's big, yeah.
Yeah. There's other things that I'm just going to go ahead and, in the interest of time, just point out that the more I study it, the more that I see. This boat on the water, it also kind of resembles a chalice. Like this is the top of a chalice of wine, and you can kind of see the base of it down here. You can sort of see very abstractly here what looks like kind of abstract pictures of the face of Christ, and maybe kind of his crown on top of the head right there. Right here, you see, I interpret this to be like a tomb, but that tomb is on fire. And you see this flame looking up from the tomb. And as you start to look up more, it starts to look more like a veil being split, like the veil in the temple being split when Christ died. So you got this tomb on fire. You got the Christ in the boat, all aflame and light. This veil is being ripped from the bottom to the top within this great tabernacle of God's. You see here what look a lot like bubbles at first, kind of coming up here in the light. You see some of that down here too in the dark. And the more I looked at that, the more I interpreted that as these are souls. These are the souls of people evacuating up out of the darkness as this light bearer comes through, shining his light everywhere. Boom. Everyone and everything starts evacuating up from the depths. There is what appears to be kind of a dark winged creature flying right here off on the left. And then up in the upper left corner, right up here, where you see me circling, that looks to me like a face of someone looking on this whole scene. They appear to have like something covering their head. They're cloaked. They might even be muzzled. And you see their eyes right here, and those eyes are yellow, reflecting the flame going on.
Oh, that way. Oh, I see. I was thinking it's a profile, and that the upper left part of that part of the painting is like looks like a man, a Jewish guy with a robe on, and you're seeing his headdress, and he's looking up toward the left. Again,
it's an impressionistic work. We're probably all going to read different things into it, but what I read into it, what I interpreted, is I believe this is our enemy, the devil, Satan, looking on as Christ comes through, setting all his work on fire, and all he can do is watch, and he sees the light is even reflected in his eyes, watching all his work come to nothing. So, so I need to tell you the story about picking this painting up, actually from Thomas also, because we saw this in 2017. I was captivated by it. I asked my wife at the time, can we buy it? Can we buy it? And she said, no, we're not spending that kind of money. And I said, okay. And I relented. And over the years, from time to time, I'd think about this painting. And come 2 years ago, 2022, we had some money that we could spend on something like this. And I asked Tanya if she would be on board with getting it. She agreed. So, but I couldn't remember what the name of the painting was, where it was located, other than it was in a gallery in Taos. And so I started to try to research that. And I kind of remembered where we were in Taos as we were walking through, and I looked for some art galleries there, and I'd go to the different art galleries websites, and I try to see the work that they had there. None of it looked right. None of it looked even remotely close to this sort of painting. And on Google Maps, there was a building along kind of where I thought we were walking that just, it said the name Untitled on it. So I was like, what is this, Untitled? Is this something that went out of business? And it turned out that the name of the art gallery was the Untitled Art Gallery. So it wasn't just like some error in Google Maps. So I clicked on the link for Untitled, and it was actually an art gallery. And as I started to browse through their paintings, I'm like, oh, this looks like the type of work we were looking at. And I went through the different artists and got to Randall LaGrove, started flipping through his work, and I'm like, that's it. That's the painting. And I cyber stalked him the artist a little bit. I tried to figure out, okay, who's this Randall LaGrove? What else has he done? And the first chance I got, I called. I actually tracked down his email or his phone number somehow online, the artist Randall's, and I also got in contact with the curator of the gallery. And come to find out, the painting was still sitting there 5 years later. And I said, I'd like to come buy it. So Labor Day 2022, my youngest daughter, Allie, and I got in the truck. We drove from Austin to Taos over Labor Day weekend. We paid for the painting, picked it up, and I got to meet the artist, Randall. And we had a lovely lunch with him and his wife, and we talked about the painting. And it was just sweet, new artist friend. And he as he does, he I didn't go into a lot of detail about what I saw in the painting and how I interpreted it, but he basically said, yeah, in his artwork, he likes to plant lots of different symbols and images in there, kind of hide them and see if you discover them, almost like a children's scholastic book that's got this complex picture on it, and can you find everything that's in there? So, he affirmed that, yeah, he was in fact a believer, and that there was a lot of significant imagery in there. So, he may listen to this recording, and it'd be interesting to see if he actually agrees that kind of some of the things I identified in there are what he intended to put in there. I don't know. But who's to say that we as artists, sometimes what shows up in our artwork is actually what we intended, or some other greater inspiration writing something into that music or that piece of work than we even realized was there. So anyway, this painting inspired me. It's why I titled the piece the Triumph of the Light Bearer, as a nod to this artist and his approach to doing this artwork. He basically said, I'm going to overwhelm you with imagery that I pull from the Bible and put it in this one piece and let you sit there and chew on it and let it become more and more alive the more that you study it. And I was like, I want to do the same thing with a piece of music. I want to pack into that piece of music all the imagery that I possibly can to tell this massive story of the goodness and glory of God expressed through his church, the resurrection narrative, hitting it. I have a document, if you're interested, I could send, that has 10 pages, 150 different Bible references of things that I attempted to convey in the piece, The Triumph of the Light Bearer. I doubt Randall meant to give glory to Lucifer any more than I intend to. But it's interesting, that word light bearer. I'm going to change the title, not only because I don't want that confusion, but also because the more I think about it, it is theologically incorrect to call Christ the light bearer, because he is not the light bearer. He is the light. And we are light bearers. And even to some extent, Satan is a light. Satan reflects Christ, even though he doesn't know it. And we reflect.
He's a fallen angel.
Yes, he's a fallen angel, yeah.
And just to throw in a thing, one of my favorite things to bring up always in our group is, well, there are two things. One is to encourage other composers in our group, and the other is to address the issue of pride.
Yeah.
and insecurity and egotism,
Yeah.
which I've had in me. So
Yeah.
Lucifer, the first sin was also the worst sin. The first
Yeah.
sin was pride with Lucifer.
Yeah.
It was also the worst. The
Yeah.
others even are a little less than that one. And
Well,
so
it
that's
it read it
I'm equal to God. I will ascend
exactly.
up to the throne, and we fall into that too. I fall
Yeah.
into that. So even often, if I put myself before Jesus, he doesn't like that Jesus, and he doesn't like it because he loves me. That's why he
Yeah.
doesn't like it.
And it renders a relationship with him impossible because there can only be one God. There can only be one of him. And if we think that we're him, all of a sudden relating to him is impossible because that's his job.
No,
Um,
we don't want to get past 10 o'clock. It would be a 2-hour
yes.
program.
Yeah.
So we do have to move
Let's
it.
get on.
But I also don't want to be like, come on, hurry up, like that. So
Well, let's move on.
you do a very good job, and you do a very good job speaking. Your speaking voice. I keep talking about all your speaking voices, and but it's very calm, clear, and you don't do a lot of well, and like I was trying to do like and like. It's like you do that very well. Do you
Thank
speak
you.
a lot of locations?
Um, I don't speak very often. I mean, I do speak a lot. I've always spoken a lot in my sales career, so I do give a lot of
Okay,
presentations
all
to
right. So
companies. Yeah,
that's what it
yeah,
is. Okay,
yeah.
let's go
So
on.
let me talk through the lyrics so that the storyline is clear, and then we'll play the piece. All right. So the piece starts off with a roll of the drums, a strike of the chimes, conveying the tomb has just opened up. Christ has walked out. He has risen, and all of creation is trembling, right, with anticipation. And he's singing, and his song is in the air. Garden warmed by dawn's first light, a lingering tune, voice out of sight. The ground it rumbles, rolls, and quivers. From its depths, vast hope simmers. And then Christ sings, I rise, the beginning and the end. And then he leaves the scene. And as he's leaving, a nameless onlooker enters the scene. Enter one who him knew and loved, sorrow fresh, great wrong done, someone who knew Christ and experienced his death on the cross and is still reeling and hurting from that. They've entered the garden where the tomb is, and all of a sudden they see the open tomb and they're struck by fear and shock, and they don't know what to make of it. Jolt severe, shock, fear, onlooker swoons, behold the tomb. Plaintive cries to heaven rise, answer grasping, his words clasping. This nameless onlooker is someone who loved Christ and who has come to learn that somehow this Lord that they loved and served always had the answer in his word somewhere. They may have been hiding in plain sight. You may not remember what he said, but you remember he had the answer. And they remember, did he say something about this? Let me call out to heaven for an answer. Open bare the tomb, rest of our head. Tell again once more exactly what he said. Tell once more what he said. And then heaven answers. And when heaven answers, one of the things I attempt to do in this piece, both in the lyrics and in the music, is to connect ideas that often we may not connect that well theologically, between not just Christ's work in saving us and redeeming us on the cross and through his resurrection, but God's glorious work of creation and his eventual glorious work of consummation and judgment at the end of all things. These are all related concepts. Um, we are saved and renewed in that saving. The person that he made us to be is somehow dead and buried and waiting to be brought to life. And so in our salvation, he is recreating us into that original image that he has for us. And also that work of salvation or redemption also is related to the end times judgment. We are saved from something, not just to be with Christ, but to have freedom from the wrath and judgment of God against our sin. And so musically, when I can try to convey these glorious acts of his redemption, I'm also hearkening back to the creation and looking forward to eventual judgment. And so when God speaks, I convey it as though he's speaking over the waters of creation. So he answers the onlooker's cry. With a boom and quaking start, the footers of the cosmos part. Life himself poised, brooding, hovers, as first he did o'er creation's waters. Again, the promise he announces. Off every hill it leaps, spills, bounces. 3 days, then we will meet again. And what happens here musically is there's this leitmotif or leitmotif that I use to convey the voice of Christ that shows up over and all over in this music. And it's this phrase, bum, 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 ba ba bum, 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 played in the brass. And it repeats itself over and over here at this point. And orally, kind of the inspiration for that was actually hearing the sound of cannon fire off the walls of Paladura Canyon in the play Texas that they do about the history of Texas every summer. If you've never heard cannon fire ripple over and over off the walls of a cannon, off of a canyon, it's like something you've never heard. You hear it, and then all of a sudden you hear it again, and you hear it again, and it kind of keeps circulating. So you kind of get that effect there. 3 days, then we will meet again. Onlooker fails to understand. Meet again? Meet again? Meet again? What's that? And then all at once the meaning lands. Meet again. Again, said he. Hope immense starts to swell. Universe's prize can't be held. Terror bound, drunk down at all. Full force rushing waterfall. Suddenly the king appears with summons loud for all to hear. There are two images, themes I'm trying to use in this music here and in the lyrics to convey the hope and the seed of faith that is starting to swell up in this onlooker. One is like you've got a person who's thirsty and they need to quench that thirst. And right over here is Niagara Falls. Why don't you tilt back your head and try to drink down that waterfall? Such it is to take in, to have the love of God shed abroad in your heart. And that of a seed being planted inside this onlooker, which once it's planted is going to start to try to grow, and you won't be able to contain it. In fact, it will split you open and come shooting out. This onlooker knows that this hope that they've all of a sudden had planted inside them is about to come springing out, and it's going to kill them. But Christ shows up, this hope is swelling up inside them, and all of a sudden Christ starts to speak. And this is one of my proudest moments in this piece is the buildup in the brass of the tension, all of a sudden that just erupts in the fanfare in the brass as Christ sings, "Oh, my kin spring free, come and reign with me, for the work is done and the victory won." And then the onlookers respond, "Can it be? Can it be? Can it be? Please, oh, can it be? It is he." And this faith that is growing up in the onlookers, it's about to undo them and wreck them completely. Mortal peril, check the pulse. Heart does race and soul convulse. This swelling hope, grace seed of faith, will soon burst out and have its way. The music shifts right here to be a little darker, and you start to hear a triplet rhythm in the timpanis. And that triplet rhythm, I'm intending to convey several different pictures. That of a heart beating really loud, boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. But it also gives this effect of a ship being tossed and buffeted around at sea. It has a nautical kind of sound. And that comes to play in the lyrics here too. "Oh, batten down this heart, for it burst apart. I am cleft in two. I'm split in two, vaulting out, bounding forth brand new." So this person is dying and being reborn at the same time. The old is sloughing off as is split off from their sin and shame is falling off. And the new them, the real them that God created is jumping out. You have the men singing the lyrics on the left, vaulting out, bounding forth brand new. The women are singing, "Every sin I confess now, vanity clothed in doubt. Here I am, Lord, death's form left shorn, word breathed reborn, to this heart sworn you." So we've just gone through cosmic labor and delivery here with the onlooker. They've been dead and they've been reborn in this encounter with Christ. But Jesus isn't done. He immediately, the scene shifts again, and king not done, no time for ease, ground still rumbles for release. He climbs Mount Zion, cresting Zion, set to top it. He ascends past watchful prophets, all creation going wild as with pains of bearing child. Atop the end-stone law he mounts its visioned end and sourcing fount. King transfigured, blazing bright, ground scepter strikes in righteous might. Cracking earth's reverberation preludes long-waited emancipation. And then Christ sings again here, more choral lyrics. By not death nor hell shall you be bound, for I press the curse into the ground. So he is claiming the ground is the place of death. It's where we were drawn from. God breathed the breath of life into our nostrils, and it's what we will return to when we die. And he's saying, death itself, I just put to death. I pressed it into the ground. And as he does that, he's about to then draw up from the ground the whole host of the church, the redeemed, who are going to come spewing out of the ground, like in Ezekiel, as dry bones that rattle around a bit. And there's a woodblock solo going on here in the piece. So you hear this, da, 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 and it's the sound of all these bones spewing out of the ground, assembling into skeletons. Then you see they're fleshed and fully robed, and they then light up and they float into the sky, the church, singing their song of celebration and redemption. Fissures spew out rattling bones, sinewed, fleshed, fully robed. The king's redeemed ignite and rise. His radiant glory burns across the sky. The image I have there is Philippians chapter 2, I think, where Paul says, shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. And the church sings together, jubilation, boundless glee, by the king himself set free. And there's kind of a swagger and a swing to this at this part of the song. Ransom paid, fully owned, granted seat on lesser throne. There's one more kind of shift in the scene here now where we shift back to Christ with the onlooker in what I would describe as a cosmic nursery. He is holding this new baby, and they're looking at each other like a babe looks at its mama, and singing to each other. Ported now in peace and purity, Lord and birthling in the nursery, like mom and babe and duet sweet and mirrored gaze each other's treat. And they sing one to another, nevermore shall the curse be found. Rent of guilt and shame, mine you claim. Christ singing to the baby, do not fear, I'm ever near. And the birthling sings back, do not fear, ever near, do not fear. That's the first section of the song, the 8-minute intro. It shifts then into a 4-verse hymn that explores the meaning of this cruciform pattern, that we are in Christ and he is in us. He died and was resurrected. We died with him and are resurrected also. And in that process of death and resurrection, there's triumph and there's community. But it explores these ideas from ever expanding vantage points. First, from the vantage point of the onlooker, who's now a new believer, and they're marching out into the battlefield of life to take it on. The next verse is from the perspective of an older, more seasoned believer who's struggling to make it through life. And they receive fresh courage and encouragement from the Lord. The third verse is looking at the perspective of the church across time and history, and God's promise that the gates of hell will not prevail against her, that he gave his life for her. And in that sacrifice of himself, life starts sprouting up everywhere, and letting the seed fall down to the ground. All of a sudden there are vines and fruit growing everywhere from that. And then the last verse is from the perspective of heaven, arriving at heaven, the healing of the nations, the place where God himself is there and is the light for the nations, providing them healing from the tree of life, where we will be wed forever together with him and each other in grace and worship of him. From nursery to the battlefield, word and faith, the sword and shield, anchored strong in remembrance of saving, headlong toward eternity praising. The verses go like this: all was lost, cold death, foul waster, stole from us our hope to save. Grafted to our Lord and Master, we sunk with him in that grave. Each of these verses kind of starts off on a darker, more minor tone. But as you shift to the second half of the verse, I shift keys, and there's kind of this heroic surge of the horns, and then it kind of explodes from there. Now he soars free, we fly with thee, loosing, binding, hearts entwining, nationed for eternity. Verse 2 starts with the narrator. Weathered, weary, tired feet long their Lord to finally meet. By steady trials, lifelong ravaged, God of hope breathes in fresh courage. Fear, pride, anger, in heart vying, world and hell do spite and rage. Cross-born striving, daily dying, we press on following your way. You will get through, says God. I rise in you. In hard story shines my glory. Don't lose heart. I will make new. Glorious sacrifice, behold the man. Mutineers lash. Satan is the mutineer. Mutineers lash against indomitable plan. Visions and praises from old and from young torment the foe till in hell he be flung. Seed sent down, death-bound for joy's crown, loving not his life to spare. Offshoots pierce, confound the hard ground, life sprouts teeming everywhere. Bride's war cry sounds, hell's gates crash down. She his chosen queen betrothed, beacon strong for lost ones found. Long last arrive we at heaven's gate, echoing out a great party rages. Come, I've been waiting, I've made you a place. Great throng together, wed forever in my grace. Nations stream to city's light beam, lit fast by her biding king. Life's tree teems with fruit of healing, salve to end all suffering. Christ on your throne, we your grace shown, making, saving, now all raising, first and last, our hearts you own. Amen. So those are the lyrics and the narration. I'll go ahead and play it for you now. I'm thinking, based on what you shared, I have a version of it recorded with me doing the narration on it. But given that it sounds like it creates some auditory contention for you, I'll just play it without the recorded narration. How does that sound? Okay. And I'm playing it from my composing software, so it's got pretty good instruments that you can hear, and it can't articulate the lyrics, but I'll blow the lyrics up so you can see them as it progresses. And I look forward to getting this recorded, hopefully in the not too distant future.
For the listening page, you're putting on the same piece, right?
Yes.
On
if you want,
we
yeah.
want the narration, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Really, I understand for Lydia that's a problem for her, but it also it really just hearing the music without the narration.
Yeah.
It also for all of us something is missing. All four of us here. Yeah.
All right. Because it's a big score. I don't think I'm going to show all the instrumental parts. I'll blow it up to where you can see the lyrics as they proceed through. I think that would be best. Does that sound good for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you can also see the
How
narrator.
about, no, you could scroll the words again as the music is playing, but no, I don't, you decide.
Yeah, I don't know how to separate the words from the music in this piece of software. All right, so here we go. Give me the thumbs up that you can hear it. Thank you for listening to that gentle little piece with me.
Very powerful, like the resurrection.
Yeah.
Very powerful, but you don't have any mercy on the singers. There has to be a few more places for the singers to sing, not quite so loud, and to get recovery time. You do give them some recovery time, but
Yeah.
you have some long, I'm a singer as
Yeah.
well as a composer. So I'm just speaking from a truly sustained vocal count, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're rehearsing this, you would be rehearsing it very sotto voce, you know, in places. But I mean, there's some really powerful things happening, but you got to not forget the singers.
Yeah.
Is there also enough very rest for the brass players?
Yeah. They're working.
Yeah,
They're definitely working.
that's brass is the closest to human voice.
Yeah.
Of big groups.
I tried to break up the pieces in a lot of spots, and there's probably some more I could do to try to work in a rest. But yeah, especially towards the end, the last verse, the end, it's just boom, everyone full speed. Yeah.
You remember what Beethoven said, you know, from the Ninth Symphony?
Something to the effect of, I don't care about the players.
Yeah, the singers were kind of complaining. He said,
Yeah.
and he said, "Too bad," or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Beethoven's Ninth is also not merciful to sopranos.
Yeah.
But that's very, you know, the resurrection is a most extraordinary event, and without going in length about it, if you have never, the few of us that are here right now, or somebody listening to a video of this, if you have never read about the Shroud of Turin, please do. It is unquestionably an image that was left in a nanosecond of time of Jesus at the instant of resurrection. And from the way the hair falls and things, he was standing up when it happened. And the estimate is that the amount of energy in that nanosecond is like all the energy on the planet combined right now, if you go together. And because we have denominational differences in Christianity, and of course not ELC, sorry, well, not that, Christian Fellowship of Art Music Composers, we have, if we have, you know, we represent all denominations, so we transcend that really very much too. But we live in our own little worlds of denominations and are unaware of what other people are doing. We're all Christian. But that's a different subject. But the resurrection was an extraordinary, unparalleled event. And so in the, I don't know if in any of your churches, if you say Christ is risen, he is risen.
Is risen indeed. Yeah.
That which in Greek is Christo anesti alithos anesti.
Yeah.
It's he's really risen. If he didn't rise from the dead, as Paul said, we're just wasting our time. What is this all about? So anyway, it's a very effective piece. And so the question is, now you have to get a performance of it. And
yes,
go over with the performers before they perform it. They're making suggestions, you know, how it is to be performed, a conductor, and working with that. That would.
Yeah. So I'm open to, you know, I consider it generally compositionally done. I'm open to maybe some tweaks. I'm still getting a little feedback on it. You know, Bill, you've suggested maybe another key change or two in the first half of the piece, and I'm thinking about that. And other people have said it could use some engraving help, and maybe I need to think about working in more rests for different parts. So those are all valid comments that I may, to some extent, try to do or not. I'm at a point where I kind of need to let it rest for a little bit before I take up much
you
more.
have to think. You think if those brass people's, you know, they have to rest their chops from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
And it's interesting. I've been struck by the vision that maybe the path to use a business term, the path to market for this piece may not be a live performance. It may be studio recorded and put in the form of a book, an illustrated book that would actually take the storyline and put visual images to it with some of the lyrics and the narration as printed on the page, with some other pages of commentary and discussion questions that an adult or even a school age or older child might be able to sit and enjoy really rich art, soak in some music theory, hear this great music, and have the gospel kind of soaking over them as they do so. That's
That
kind
would
of,
be more even so a video, because a book and then playing a recording and looking at a book
yeah,
is to make a video with
maybe,
visual,
yeah,
with the whole
yeah,
thing visual,
yeah,
including, uh, which is the big work is getting images for that.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
that means going on, like, what do you call it, on Google Image, and
yeah,
a lot of these places you can buy things, but a lot of it you don't have to buy. But then,
yeah,
to coordinate it all together, and including even finally to have the words on the screen at the bottom of the page, so that those words are seen. But as I was listening to it now, you really can follow the whole thing, reading the words, and you hear the music. For
yeah,
us as composers, that works. We can
yeah.
hear that. It isn't like it's lost. And you do a good job with your narration also. So
Yeah.
on the recording, when he narrates, it sounds good.
So I know we're running short on time.
Yeah, and I
We can,
think, well, okay, go ahead.
well, we can wrap. If you have if anyone has anything else they want to share or ask about this piece, I'm happy to field that. I have one more piece. It's another 2-minute thing I could play. That's envisioned to be another bridal march, or we can just wrap, whatever. But
Any comments first? Any comments first of all, more on the triumph of the Christ, or
yeah, we'll
it,
call it that.
the anointed, or something, some other thing. Any more comments from anyone? Well, I guess we'll hear this is for Wedding March #2 for the next daughter.
Possibly, if the next daughter wants it. I will tell you, I feel like in this next piece, it's evidence of my growth as a composer because it's my third piece. And the first bridal march that I did for my daughter, for my first daughter, that probably took me 2 to 3 months to write. The first one that I played. This piece that I just played for you, I've been working on for about a year. This piece, the one I'm about to play, it's about 2 minutes long, and it took maybe 3 or 4 days for me to knock it out. Just boom. So I think the skills of kind of thinking through and planning out the harmony and the melody and working the instruments together kind of really came together in this, my third attempt, much more efficiently. And I don't know if additional music will be this easy for me to write, but I'm now happy with it after 1 or 2 revisions.
That's great.
So
That's great you're doing that.
yeah.
You know,
So let me go ahead and just a word of commentary on this. I envision it as a bridal march, and there's kind of a story to this. There's a subject here, a character, and at the onset of this march, they're kind of lonely, melancholy, and they're resigned to the fact that maybe they have to go on alone in life, and they'll do that. But all of a sudden, hope dawns. Maybe they're not alone, and in the awareness that maybe they're not alone, this hope starts to grow in them, and that hope carries them through all the way to the fruition of joining together with this companion in celebration. And then kind of the end of the song closes with, this companionship. This couple is now reflecting back on a long journey of joy together. So that's really kind of the picture that I have in my head as I put this piece together and play it for you. So Untitled Bridal March #2 by J. Foulkrod. Here we go. And there we go.
Nice. Sounds sort of Irish.
Yeah, I guess. Any thoughts or comments in conclusion on that?
And it is certain things you do with the way it's written, you're improving.
Yeah.
Probably the best compliment I ever got as a composer was now a number of years ago. A singer who heard my music a lot said, "Your music's getting better."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you all for joining me, and I thank you for those who may listen after the fact. And
Yes.
I would love to continue to exchange feedback or comments. And I'll even throw this out there for everyone who may listen. This idea of setting that one piece to the form of a book is something that I'm thinking about in a bigger scale. Also, I kind of have like a whole series of children's books kind of brewing in my head and my heart of different sorts of images or themes that I'd love to set to book and music that tell the gospel story from beginning to end in both musical and visual form in a book that kids could sit in mom and dad's or grandma and grandpa's lap and sit there and read together, having their imaginations kind of shaped and formed toward Christ through great music and great visuals and great storytelling. And I'm kind of at a point in life where my vision for the things that I'd love to do exceeds my capacity to do them, and that might be something for which I'd love help. So, I think I look at the music I've done thus far, perhaps my best skill is in the lyricizing, the creating the lyrics and the storyline. And, I might love compositional help to put some of these together. So I don't know if that's of interest to anyone. Maybe we should talk further about that. So, but thank you. Thank you for letting me be part of CFAMC, share some of my passion and work with everyone. And I'd love to talk further about this or your work as well and hear some of yours and give you
Well,
my impressions.
here's some applause for you, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bill, it's all yours.
Well,
Or we can.
there was something I was going to say. What was it? It was an important thing to say. Oh, I know. It's not that important. We, of course, this is a Friday night, not a Saturday afternoon. And definitely at least 3 people I know of would be affected in the Midwest from the tornadoes. So,
Yeah.
so that accounts for a smaller number than usually we get about 10 or 12 people. But we'll encourage, people to listen to the video too and get back to you. And thank you very much for sharing that. Jay is a very, very good man and in many areas. And I'm sure Tanya agrees. And even when she corrects him when he makes mistakes, as all wives do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you're a wonderful couple, which we got to see her today too.
Yeah.
Let's give her our love.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let me say a prayer.
Okay.
Father, we thank you for the ability to help people and also to share beauty with people. And these are 2 different gifts that Jay and his uses, and help him to keep developing them in the way you see fit, and help him to keep his mind stayed on thee because he trusts in thee. And Jesus bless his family also, those 4 daughters, all those families with the kids that they deal with, and all the music he creates, a very different kind of a thing to do. They all have their place and their value. And Jesus, we thank you, and we pray for a good night for all of us, and also for the members who weren't here tonight. Bless them also. Help some of them listen to this program. Amen. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Okay, well, have a good night.
Thank
and
you.
See you next month.